What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Slaw Sports Show. I'm your host, Cole Noble, aka Slaw, here on a Sunday morning, 11 o'clock. Usually, and it's been the case the last 2 weeks here on the Slaw Sports Show, we are 2 hours away from NFL kickoff, usually when we start our show. But today, it's a different story. Today, kickoff began at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning in London, across the pond. The Atlanta Falcons are currently taking on the New York Jets right now, and let me tell you, the Falcons are handling the Jets right now. Currently at halftime, it is 20-3, a Falcon lead right now. We're going to keep you posted and updated all hour long on this game as it continues. But if you don't know what happens on the Slaw Sports Show, if you're a new listener here on WSOE 89.3, or you're a new viewer on YouTube at the Slaw Sports Show, watching and tuning in as well, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in, thank you for joining. And the way our show works, the way our rundown works, is we do a thing here on the Slaw Sports Show where we break down each of our Sunday games today, starting with the 1 o'clock slate, all the way through Sunday Night Football. Break down each game, the implications, the spread, the money lines, everything that we need to talk about, the big storylines for each game today that you need to be looking out for as you begin your Sunday NFL kickoff. And then we go to our starts and sits of the week for you fantasy owners out there needing to get some help, get some advice on some fantasy lineups. We'll have you covered. Each week we have 2 players that we are suggesting you start and 2 players that I suggest you sit in your lineup. If you are a fantasy football extravagant player, fantasy football lover like me, I got 6 lineups going today in fantasy football. So I got some help if you need to figure out who to start in today's matchups and who to sit as well. Got 2 for those. And then we go into our lock and upset games of the week. Our locks have been doing great. Our upsets struggling a little bit. Cincinnati Bengals helped us out 2 weeks ago, beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hit a little bit of a roadblock last week with our upset. We took the Detroit Lions over the Chicago Bears. Well, last time I will ever bet on the Detroit Lions this season. But nevertheless, we got our lock and upset to 2 teams that I feel pretty confident in going into today. And my upset, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people with what we got going there in that one. But let's backtrack and go back across the pond. Let's talk about this first half of the Atlanta Falcons against the New York Jets. Talk about what's happened so far in the first half. Matty Ice right now is cooking. Has 189 yards and 2 touchdowns at the half. He is playing great. And for all of you owners of Kyle Pitts, the game has come. 6 receptions, 64 yards, 1 touchdown, has 7 targets in the first half. We expect this to happen finally this week. No Calvin Ridley, no Russell Gage at wide receiver. We expected a huge game from Kyle Pitts, and we are getting one right now in London against the New York Jets. Cordell Patterson playing well as well. Left the game briefly, thought he had a concussion, but he came back into the game. He has 3 receptions for 34 yards, along with 8 carries for 42 on the ground, a long of 12 rushing the ball. Cordell Patterson, just the do-it-all guy for that offense so far this season. Who would have thought after 9 years in the league, it finally took the Atlanta Falcons to figure out how to successfully use Cordell Patterson right? So they're playing great offensively if you are the Atlanta Falcons. Defensively, they're doing great as well. Zach Wilson is struggling so far through the first half. 5 for 13 for 42 yards and a lone interception as well. Not a great start there for Zach Wilson in this game. Jalen Hawkins got the pick, returned it 11 yards for that Falcons defense. All Falcons pretty much in this first half. The Jets, of course, do have that lone field goal, but so far not doing as well as you would expect across the pond if you're the New York Jets. Atlanta Falcons, I mean, from what I know, it's a home crowd there in London. There's a big fan base of Atlanta Falcons fans in London. All the talk's always been about the Jacksonville Jaguars and how they're going to be the ones going across the pond. Not saying the Falcons are going to be leaving and going to London anytime soon, but the Falcons, from what I know, have a huge fan base in London and in England. So this could end up turning into a home crowd here with a 17-point lead going into the second half. And like I said, we'll come back and catch up on this game as it rolls along. We are currently at halftime in this game. So we're going to look at some other games we have on the radar going into Sunday's NFL kickoff matchups. Let's start off with New Orleans. The New Orleans Saints will be a 2.5-point favorite in Washington to take on the Washington football team. And New Orleans Saints, they're an interesting team this year. They have been an interesting team that I cannot get my finger on. I cannot figure out for the life of me who the New Orleans Saints are this year. Week 1 absolutely obliterated my Green Bay Packers, but ever since then they haven't looked as sharp. Haven't looked as great as they did that first game. Jameis Winston throwing 5 touchdowns against the Packers in Week 1. They've done nothing since. Last week they finally had a home debut for the first time in New Orleans with the hurricane situation going on. They couldn't play a home game to start the season. Week 4, they finally got that home game, and they lost. They lost in overtime to the New York Giants. The Giants ran all over them, especially late in that game. Saquon Barkley finally had his breakthrough game last week against the Saints. So really, we don't know what's going on with the Saints. And mainly, it's been Alvin Kamara. The guy has not had any targets this season. The guy's hardly getting any carries this season. They're not even making him a priority in this offense, and I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know what's up with Alvin Kamara this year or why Sean Payton is not using him. You would think that'd be the focus of their offense. No more Drew Brees. No Michael Thomas. Who do they have left? Alvin Kamara. But they're not making him the staple focal point that they need to be. They need to be pounding Kamara over and over again to open things up for Jameis Winston, and then you sprinkle in the Taysom Hill. Instead, it's just Jameis Winston's 25-yard passes and dump-offs all game long that's not getting him anywhere and not getting this offense anywhere. They're going to have to figure it out today against the Washington football team, whose defense should be a top 5 defense, but this year have been flat out as abysmal this season. Washington has not played good at all defensively. This is the Saints' game to win here on the road, and they got to get things right. But offensively, for Washington, you got to respect what Taylor Heinicke has done off the bench in replace of Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's coming back. He's doing Taylor Heinicke things. He likes putting himself in a situation where he has to come back into games. We saw that last week against the Falcons. But this week, no Diami Brown, their rookie wide receiver. He is out, so hammer down on Curtis Samuel. He is now back to that traditional number 2 role beside Terry McLaurin, and they are going up against the Saints defense. Expect McLaurin to get shadowed heavily by Marshawn Lattimore in this matchup. So Curtis Samuel, I think, could finally have a good game here for the Washington football team. But overall, this is the Saints game to win on the road. 2.5 point favorites going into Washington. This is the Saints game to, really show the rest of the league that their offense can compete at a high level. And like I said, they're going to need Alvin Kamara to do so in this game. Now let's go to an NFC North matchup. Detroit Lions going to Minnesota to take on the Vikings, who are a 10-point favorite in this game. Like I said, I'm not betting on the Detroit Lions for the rest of the season. This 10-point favorite for the Vikings is exactly why. No reason should the Vikings of all teams be a 10-point favorite in this game, but they are. That's where it's set right now. Detroit, the way they played, the way they can cover, expecting the same thing here with a 10-point favorite. Don't think Minnesota wins this by 10 points, but I still think Minnesota gets the job done. I'm not betting on Detroit to win any more games this year, so I do expect Detroit to cover in this one, with Minnesota being a 10-point favorite. Dalvin Cook is a game-time decision yet again for the Minnesota Vikings, but we saw what Alexander Mattison can do off the bench. Not too worried here if Cook can't go for the Vikings, and expect Kirk Cousins to keep having a great game that he's had, or a great game like he's had so far this season. Ultimately, I mean, the weaker matchup here is going to be this Detroit offense against the Minnesota Vikings defense. Minnesota has a chance here defensively to get right. They did last week against the Cleveland Browns, had stomped the Browns to only 14 points in that game. The offense couldn't get things figured out. This is a game for Mike Zimmer to get things flowing consistently and together on the same page offensively and defensively. They can look to do that here against the Detroit Lions at this early 1 o'clock slate. Now let's go to an AFC South showdown. Tennessee Titans negative 4.5-point favorites against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are on the road in Jacksonville. Still no Julio Jones. Is anybody, I'll take flyers. Is anyone surprised? No Julio Jones for another straight week for the Tennessee Titans. However, A.J. Brown is back. From what we know about A.J. Brown, coming off an injury, his first game back, he has been fantastic. Keep an eye on him. He's not going to be one of my starts this week, and for fantasy, I got some bolder starts to keep in mind. But if you have A.J. Brown, don't be worried. He always does great coming off injuries and great coming back into the lineup and makes his presence known. So A.J. Brown will have a good game today against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you know who's actually going to have a great game? Derrick Henry. Always fire up El Tractorcito in these AFC South matchups, especially against the Jaguars. It's not a Thursday night game for Jaguars-Titans where Derrick Henry just absolutely turns into an animal. But still, 1 o'clock Sunday game, early window, Derrick Henry should keep things rolling, gas him up, oil it up. El Tractorcito is ready to rumble again today against the Jaguars like he always does. Excited to see the game he puts on today on the road for the Tennessee Titans. Always love seeing Tractorcito just absolutely rumble through defenses. Now let's go keeping things in the state of Florida. We got a Florida matchup. Miami Dolphins at the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are 10-point favorites in this one. They should heavily win. No Antoine Winfield or Rob Gronkowski for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. However, for the Miami Dolphins, they are hurting at wide receiver today. Will Fuller got placed on the IR earlier this week with a hand injury, and we just got report in that no Devontae Parker as well at wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. So what they have at wide receiver going on is bare thin in this game against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers, last time we saw them on Sunday Night Football was the return for Tom Brady in New England. They got the job done, but they had to squeak one out against Mac Jones and Bill Belichick. They should be ready to absolutely dominate a team, and I think that's going to be the case. 10-point favorites. I think Tampa Bay goes over 10 against the Miami Dolphins in this one. Really excited about this matchup, and it's going to be one that we'll talk about later on in this episode. Now let's go to the Green Bay Packers. My team here, the Green Bay Packers, are 3-point favorites at Cincinnati, taking on the Bengals. Cincinnati, a 3-1 start to the season. Cincinnati's played great so far this season from what we've seen of them. Offensively, they've been great. Defensively, they have been very much improved from what we've seen in years past from the Bengals. Still have, I'm going to stand by. The one issue for the Cincinnati Bengals has to be Zach Taylor, at head coach. This coaching staff is not it. It's not right for this team going forward. They still make questionable calls week in and week out. So one concern I have, and it's the one concern I've had all season leading up to the season. I've had it last year. I've had it the year before. Zach Taylor should not have been the hire in Cincinnati. I still think he's on the hot seat despite a 3-1 start. I think he's the only weakest link here for this Cincinnati Bengals team, and I think he alone will eventually lose games for him in these close games. I don't think that's going to be the case. Green Bay Packers are without Jair Alexander at corner. He has been placed on the IR with a shoulder injury. But even without Jair Alexander, Kevin King will play. He is back for this Packers defense. So Kevin King and Eric Stokes will be starting at corner. This is going to be a good matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers to go up against. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase. All should have big games against the Packers this week. Joe Burrow expecting to pass the ball a lot in this one. Joe Mixon should play. From what I've heard, he is potentially going to be set to play, but in a limited role in this game. So for those who picked up Samaje Perine off waivers in fantasy, be a little weary about that one. I think this will be a heavy passing game for the Cincinnati Bengals, especially if the Packers jump out to an early lead. They could be playing from behind and passing the ball a lot to catch up to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Now let's go to Pittsburgh, where the Steelers will be hosting the Denver Broncos, who are coming into town as a 1.5-point favorites in this one. A little bit of a surprise. Yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers have played, awful the last 3 weeks, off to a 1-3 start. Haven't played great or even good since their first game against the Buffalo Bills. Big Ben Roethlisberger stinks. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Big Ben should have retired last year, but he came back, and as everyone expected, not doing well, not doing anything for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Can't throw the ball more than 3 yards downfield in this one. But Denver Broncos coming into town. Teddy Bridgewater left the game last week with a concussion against the Baltimore Ravens. He should be good to go. He cleared protocol last night, so Bridgewater should be back at quarterback. I'm not excited about this game at all. This one's going to be a flat-out stinker. Arguably the worst game of the week, I would say, is Broncos at Steelers in this one. Not going to be watching this one, and you shouldn't either. Output I'm getting out from this game and everything I'm hearing from this game, everything tells me this is going to be a low-scoring affair, and you should expect that as well in this game. Not excited for this one. Not going to watch it. Neither should you. Moving on. Going to Carolina and Charlotte. 3-point favorites hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Christian McCaffrey is listed as doubtful. I don't expect him to play in this game, but we still have no official word on CMC's availability for this one. But coming back from a hamstring injury, yes, he's practiced all week. Yes, McCaffrey said he's fine, but it's a hamstring. The worst injury to try to force a player back from. I don't like this for Christian McCaffrey if they try to force him in this game. Last week, the running game was fine against the Dallas Cowboys. You got similar output, not quite to the scale you get with Christian McCaffrey, but Chuba Hubbard, Rolls-Royce Freeman, and the rest of that running back room played great in McCaffrey's absence. I mean, you're getting a favorable matchup here against the Philadelphia Eagles where you shouldn't necessarily have to run the ball too much against this defense. I don't quite understand it if they try to force Christian McCaffrey back in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I hope they pull him out and don't let him go in this one. Just give him a few more weeks of rest with that hamstring injury, because the more you try to rush him back from this hamstring injury, the more aggravated it will become. And if they rush him back and try to force him to play this week, we will see him pop up on the injury report every single week with the same hamstring issue, because that thing will just continue to get re-aggravated and never properly heal if you're Christian McCaffrey. But also we got to talk about Carolina a little bit more, because they were in the news this week. Pulled off a trade with the New England Patriots, trading, I believe it was a 2023 sixth-round pick for Stephon Gilmore. Yes, the former Defensive Player of the Year is on the move, going back home to Carolina. That's where he's from. He lives right down the road from General Manager Scott Fitterer. And Fitterer is continuing to pull off trades now. In the last 2 weeks, we have seen him pull off trades for a first-round pick corner in C.J. Henderson, and now a Defensive Player of the Year corner in Stephon Gilmore, already adding him to what they have with J.C. Horn when he eventually comes back from that foot injury. They still have Dante Action Jackson and A.J. Boye in that secondary. The Carolina Panthers, they are in on every single trade. They are in on the trade potentially for Jalen Smith, who ended up getting released and signing with the Green Bay Packers. But Fitterer was in on that trade. He was calling the Dallas Cowboys and trying to get something done to get Jalen Smith in Carolina. Watch out for what Fitterer's doing. He's brewing something up over there in Charlotte, down the road from where we are here in Burlington, North Carolina, sitting here at Elon University. But Carolina is brewing something up. 3-1 start to the season. They have a very favorable schedule coming up and could easily potentially get into a wild card spot and make the playoffs this year if you're the Carolina Panthers. Saying they don't just implode at the end of the season, but right now they're looking fine. Defense looks great. Sam Darnold's offense is looking improved week in and week out. There's a lot of optimism for the Carolina Panthers here in this home state of North Carolina, all around the state, for what this team is doing this year. And Stephon Gilmore trade coming in, he should be able to go by week 7 for this Panthers defense. It's a big pickup. Big, huge pickup at corner for the Carolina Panthers. So now let's go to our last 1 o'clock game on the slate, and we're going to Houston. Woof. With the New England Patriots, 8-point favorites coming into town. Could this be the get-right game for New England? A 1-3 start, but they've played great in a lot of their games, especially as of late. This past game on Sunday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mac Jones, he outdueled Tom Brady, some would say, in that game. put themselves in a position to win that game. Unfortunately, couldn't get the field goal by Nick Folk to push that lead up late in that game and end up losing to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. But now they're going to Houston. Houston's flat out stunk since their week 1 win, and I don't know. I'm really picturing this to be a get-right game for New England. I'm expecting Mac Jones to play great. He's due for a good game finally now as a rookie quarterback. This is one I think Mac Jones gets right and gets back and gets things rolling here. Jacoby Myers, I expect, should have a good game in this one. Damian Harris, I don't know what they're going to do on the ground game. I'm still a little bit worried as an owner in multiple leagues of Damian Harris. Still worried about this backfield. They love J.J. Taylor. They love Brandon Baldwin. They love Ramondre Stevenson. I don't know exactly how to get a feel of this backfield going forward if I'm this defense. But still, nevertheless, I expect this to be a get-right game. If you are the New England Patriots, you got to get back. Got to get right in this one. You're taking on a weak opponent in the Houston Texans on the road. This is your shot here to get back and get things rolling if you're Bill Belichick and this team. So now let's get to these 4 o'clock matchups. These are the ones I'm actually more excited about on today's slate. Let's start in SoFi. The LA Chargers are hosting the Cleveland Browns as 2-point favorites at home. For the Cleveland Browns, Greg Newsome, their rookie cornerback first-round pick, is expected to miss his second straight game and what should be a deciding really miss and a really deciding out designation for Greg Newsome going up against Justin Herbert. We've seen how well they've played this year. Mike Williams has been great. Keenan Allen has been consistent as always, and Herbert's slinging the ball, and he's not afraid to do so. So they're really going to test this Browns defense, who have gotten better and have looked great so far this season with what they've been doing. But no Greg Newsome in that secondary. Expect Herbert to air the ball out in this one. But the Browns, they're going to do their typical Browns. Pound the rock with Chubb and Hunt. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb should expect to get a lot of carries in this game. From what we see, we didn't see any run game at all on Monday from the Las Vegas Raiders. So expect the Cleveland Browns to flip the script here against the LA Chargers, run the ball heavily. I'm not going to try to predict an Odell Beckham game. I tried to do that last week against the Vikings. That came back and bit me in the butt in that one. So not going to say anything for Odell Beckham in this passing offense for the Cleveland Browns. But I will expect these two running backs to have a good game in this one against the Chargers. This one's going to be tough to predict. I'm excited about this game. This game will definitely be on my monitor going forward in this 4 o'clock slate. Chargers-Browns should be a huge game in terms of AFC implications going toward the end of the season. It's going to be a big game against two big powerhouses so far this season. I'm really excited about this game to see who comes out on top, because I think whoever wins this game will have a deciding and very telling win of where their team is headed this year. Let's move things along. Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, who we just mentioned. They're hosting the Chicago Bears as 5.5-point favorites at home. Yes, the Raiders are 3-1. Yes, they looked great through the first 3 weeks of the season, but on Monday, they took a step back and lost that game against the Chargers. Chicago Bears, Justin Fields is the starter indefinitely. The owners had to walk in to Matt Nagy's office and force him to start Justin Fields going forward. I don't think it was Ryan Pace. It had to be the owners coming in and stepping in, because earlier in the week, Matt Nagy continued to state that if healthy, Andy Dalton is the starter. That is no longer the case. Justin Fields is the starting quarterback going forward for the Chicago Bears, and today will make his second debut, second career start, and third appearance for the Chicago Bears against this Raiders team, who, like I said on Monday, had a little bit of a step back, had a little bit of some issues against the Chargers. If you're the Raiders, you got to get back on track here. People are already writing you off early, despite that early 3-0 start to the season where you looked great. They're writing you off already after just one loss. You got to bounce back here against the Bears coming into town. Can't let Justin Fields come in and get an easy win on the road here if you are the Las Vegas Raiders. Now let's go to Arizona, who are 5-point favorites. We got a little bit of an NFC West showdown here in this one. San Francisco 49ers coming to town to take on the Cardinals. Undefeated Cardinals, the lone undefeated team in the NFL, 4-0, A huge deciding win last week against the LA Rams pushed the Cardinals up to the top spot in our weekly power rankings. They are the real deal so far this season. But Trey area time. Trey Lance is officially starting for the first time. He is getting the job this week. Jimmy Garoppolo is dealing with a little bit of a calf issue. He is out. Bring in Trey Lance off the bench. In my prediction, I said when Trey Lance starts, and you can look at everything I said on Twitter. You can look at my Twitter bio. I've been heavily pushing to start Trey Lance at quarterback. We finally got it. He will not give this job up. It's his job the rest of the season going forward. If Trey Lance performs and outperforms his projection today against the Arizona Cardinals, an undefeated team on the road, you do not give this ball back to Jimmy Garoppolo. You do not give the job back to Jimmy Garoppolo if you're Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers. But a little bit of some concern for Trey Lance. George Kittle will not play. He has been placed on the IR. He is out for the next few weeks for the San Francisco 49ers. So that's a huge weapon that Trey Lance will be missing in this one. But I'm excited. I am actually excited for this game and to see Trey Lance actually get the starting job, because I believe we have not seen the full arsenal and the full playbook from Kyle Shanahan for Trey Lance at all this season. I think that finally comes out today. We get to unleash the playbook and unleash Trey Lance against the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm excited to see Kyle Shanahan do so, see what he can cook up offensively for his number 3 overall pick at quarterback in Trey Lance. It's his time to shine, and it's his time to take over for the San Francisco 49ers. Now let's go over for the last 4 o'clock game on our slate. Let's go to Dallas for an NFC East showdown against the New York Football Giants. And funny enough, not funny enough, but interesting enough, this game is the 1-year anniversary, Week 5, of Dak Prescott's gruesome injury last year, the leg injury he suffered, and it was against the New York Giants in Dallas. And funny enough, Week 5 again, the New York Giants are coming to Dallas to take on the Cowboys in this little bit of a anniversary game for Dak Prescott's injury. In this one, the Giants have been heating up. Last week, a huge overtime win, getting their first win of the season against the New Orleans Saints. Saquon Barkley looked great. Daniel Jones passed for over 400 yards in the overtime win. The New York Giants are heating up. But are they heating up enough to come into Dallas to take on this Dallas Cowboys team who is looking great so far? Last week, knocked off the undefeated Carolina Panthers. The only loss they had this year was Week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first game of the season. And this honestly might be the best Dallas Cowboys defense we've ever seen since 2016. Trevon Diggs is looking great so far this season. 5 interceptions through 4 games. A lot of early talks and comparisons, comparing him to Deion Sanders early on. And what's his second year in the NFL, 4 games in, going into his 5th game of his second year, already getting comparisons to Deion Sanders for what he's done this year. But needless to say, this Cowboys defense has looked great. Dan Quinn's done a great job with this unit defensively. I wasn't expecting this from the Cowboys defense, but they have played great, and you got to give them some respect. Best Cowboys defense we've seen in the last 5 years or so in Dallas. Now let's go to our Sunday night football matchup here. Kansas City Chiefs are hosting the Buffalo Bills. This is set to be a fantastic game to close out our Sunday NFL games. 2.5-point favorites at home for the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Gordon is finally going to make his debut in Kansas City in this one. But the real implication of this game, this is the Bills' revenge game. This is Stephon Diggs' revenge game. Think back to the AFC Championship game last year. The Kansas City Chiefs handily took down Josh Allen and the Bills. Josh Allen really had no answer for Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs lost out on a potential chance to go to a Super Bowl in that game. And the one man who stayed and watched the entire trophy celebration winning the AFC Championship game was Stephon Diggs. He has not forgotten this. I have not forgotten this. We have not forgotten this. Stephon Diggs is going to have his revenge tonight against this Kansas City Chiefs defense who has been Swiss cheese so far this season. Absolutely terrible. for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's their Achilles heel right now, is that defense. And this is the game for the Buffalo Bills defense. 2 shutout performances so far this season by this Bills defense. They have been one of the best defenses in the National Football League, which is a huge surprise to me. This last year, that was the Bills' weakness, the running game and their defense. This year, both units have been much more better, much more improved, and that defensive unit has been one of the best in football, but they need to prove it. And this is their chance tonight to prove it against the Kansas City Chiefs in a revenge game to decide who is the best team in the AFC. Are the Bills the best team in the AFC? This is their shot to prove that they are. They are that team this year in the AFC, and they got the chance to prove it, especially defensively tonight against the Kansas City Chiefs with that offense they have with Patrick Mahomes. And just the Buffalo Bills, their offense should be fine. I'm heavily going to favor starting Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes in this game tonight. Just the way the Chiefs defense is played, the way the Buffalo Bills defense is played, I like Josh Allen a lot more in this matchup than I like Patrick Mahomes, and I like this game tonight for the Buffalo Bills on the road in Arrowhead. I like the Buffalo Bills to get a statement win tonight on Sunday Night Football. All right, before we take a quick break, some things we just got coming in on the alerts. Dalvin Cook is officially inactive for the Minnesota Vikings against the Detroit Lions. So start Alexander Mattison if you got him. That's a quick late start. If you have him, put him in your lineup. No Dalvin Cook in this game. Joe Mixon, like I said earlier, against the Green Bay Packers, he will be active, but still expect him to be in a limited role. I say stay away from that backfield. Like I said, previewing that game against the Packers, I expect this to be a huge passing game for the Cincinnati Bengals, trying to keep up with Aaron Rodgers and this offense. So in this one, hammer down on the passing attack. If you picked up Samaje Perine, be wary. Don't start him with Joe Mixon active and ready to go, even though he's still in a limited role in this game. Overall, just stay away from that backfield. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we got our fantasy starts and sit-ems. 2 starts, 2 sits of the week. You're listening to The Slaw Sports Show. All right, and we are back here on the Slaw Sports Show. We previewed all of the games on Sunday's slate today. Now let's get into some fantasy talk. If you got any fantasy questions, send them my way at Slaw Sports Show on Twitter. We're and live on YouTube at the Slaw Sports Show. If you got any questions for fantasy, send them my way. We got a lot of love for Danny Dimes and Saquads in the chat on YouTube. So the Giants fans are in full effect on YouTube. But send us some questions if you got them. We are live here on YouTube and WSOE 89.3 Elon Burlington. Let's get to the fantasy. Let's get to the starts and sits of the week. My first start today, actually both my starts are going to be running backs for this week. But first off, let's go with Leonard Fournette. I really like this matchup for Leonard Fournette going against the Miami Dolphins. Last week against the New England Patriots, Leonard Fournette saw 20 carries in that game. He has 44 total carries this season, but last week had 20. Almost half the carries he's had this season came in one game against New England. They're giving him the ball more, feeding him a lot more going forward. And this matchup against the Miami Dolphins, Miami is giving up 136.8 rushing yards per game. I think this is a good game and a good matchup for Leonard Fournette to potentially break out in this one. I also expect Tampa Bay to jump out to an early lead on the Miami Dolphins. Their defense just has not been it this year. Offensively, they haven't been getting going either. So I expect Tampa Bay to jump out to an early lead, and from then on, they're going to pound and hammer on Leonard Fournette. So I like this game for him, like this situation, like this matchup, like everything about this. For Leonard Fournette, he is in my lineup this week. He should be in your lineup as well. And next up, we got Damian Williams, a waiver wire pickup this week for a lot of people, including myself. I will be starting him against the Las Vegas Raiders. What we saw last week from Damian Williams coming in off the bench in relief of David Montgomery, who is out this week, and the weeks coming with his knee injury he suffered last week against the Lions. What we saw from Damian Williams coming in relief, 8 carries, 55 yards, and a touchdown against Detroit. I am one to not chase touchdowns in fantasy football, especially oddball touchdowns, which seems to be the case here for Damian Williams. But you got to look at this and take a step back and look at this at a broader look. If you're analyzing this game from a fantasy football perspective, Justin Fields is starting. Justin Fields started last week, and they hammered the running back a lot in that game. I expect that to be the case this week. The easiest way to have an easy game for your rookie quarterback is the running game. So I expect them to use a lot of Damian Williams. Last week against the Raiders, the LA Chargers had a great game rushing the ball, especially what we saw from Austin Eckler in that one. Just getting that win on Monday Night Football. Austin Eckler in that game had a great game. Picked up over 100 yards rushing with 15 carries, finished with 117 rushing yards and a touchdown in that game. Now, Damian Williams is no Austin Eckler, but this rushing attack, what they were going to see here from the Chicago Bears against this weak unit of the Raiders. They haven't been very good defensively on the ground. They're giving up 132.3 rushing yards per game. This is a great matchup if you're Damian Williams, and great implications at stake, especially, like I said, with Justin Fields starting in this one. I really like Damian Williams in this matchup. If you picked him up off waivers, don't be worried about starting him. Go ahead and throw him in your lineups. I expect him to have a good game against the Raiders. Now let's go over to our sits of the week. We're going to go with 2 wide receivers. So we're starting 2 running backs, and we're going to sit 2 wide receivers in this game. So if you have some flex questions with potentially some of these guys, this should help clear things up for you. Sit Courtland Sutton, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's in a rough outside matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Outside wide receivers haven't played very great so far this season against the Steelers from what we have seen so far this season. Last week against the Baltimore Ravens, Courtland Sutton did see 8 targets from Teddy Bridgewater and a little bit of Drew Lock, who sprinkled in there late in the game when Teddy Bridgewater went down with that concussion, but only had 3 receptions on those 8 targets, but picked up 47 yards. That's only 5.7 points in PPR formats from Courtland Sutton in that game against the Steelers. And the big thing with this game, I talked about it in the preview, Vegas is not projecting this game to be a high-scoring affair, actually very far from it. They're expecting to be very low-scoring in this game, and you shouldn't expect this to be high-scoring either. Expect a low-scoring affair if you are the Denver Broncos going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road in this one. Courtland Sutton, like I said, on the outside. Devontae Adams last week against the Steelers put up 6 receptions for 64 yards, but that's Devontae Adams. That's a modest 12 points from Devontae Adams against this defense. You're not going to see anywhere close to that type of performance against this defense from a wide receiver like Courtland Sutton. So sit Courtland Sutton in this one. Not excited about this matchup for him and not excited about this game at all. So do not start Courtland Sutton in this one. And also wide receiver Devonta Smith against the Carolina Panthers. Don't chase that big game we saw last week against Kansas City from the Eagles and from Devonta Smith. Had a 100-yard game, his first one of his career. Don't expect that one to be his last by any means for Devonta Smith. Had 10 targets in that game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense, how many times we got to talk about it? The Chiefs defense gave up that huge game more than Devonta Smith earned that huge game for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had 10 targets and 7 receptions, went over 100 yards, like I said, 122 on the official tally for Devonta Smith. But in this game against Carolina, I expect them to run the ball. If you're the Philadelphia Eagles, don't expect them to really air it out that much, especially against this secondary. Now they don't have Stephon Gilmore just yet. He won't come in to play for this defense until week 7, but still Dante Action Jackson and AJ Boye on that defense. Jeremy Chin at safety as well. I don't like Devonta Smith in this game. Don't chase the big game against a tough defense, especially with what we saw last week against the Chiefs, one of the worst defenses in football. Don't expect that same type of performance this week. So be wary of Devonta Smith, and I'd go as far to say sit him if you have him in your lineup, and go for one of these other options that you could potentially have off the bench in this game. Don't start Devonta Smith. Don't start Cortland Sutton, and start hammer down on Leonard Fournette and Damian Williams. Let's take a quick check, see if we got any questions we got going in the chat. Doesn't look like it. Get your questions in if you have them at Saw Sports Show on Twitter. No updates just quite yet that we have. Cortland Sutton, who we just talked about, he is active. That's the other thing with Cortland Sutton. He's dealing with an ankle injury all week long, and he's limited, now officially active in this game. Just all things considered, I do not like Cortland Sutton in this matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So another reason why you should sit him, even though he's active. Don't like this matchup for Cortland Sutton. Antonio Gibson is active, TJ Hawkinson active, and Jamie Collins at linebacker will be active, making his debut and return for the New England Patriots. Christian McCaffrey is out, Bud Dupree is out, Julio Jones is out, and Elton Jenkins for the Green Bay Packers is out as well. So that's our quick rundown of what we got going in. We're going to take another quick break, and now when we come back, we're going to give our lock and our upset of the week. This is the Saw Sports Show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back here on the Slaw Sports Show. We got some fantasy advice we just sent out on the show. Start Leonard Fournette and Damian Williams. Sit Cortland Sutton and Devonta Smith. Now we got our next section of the Slaw Sports Show, what we do on our Sunday rundowns, where we give our lock and upset of the week, the team we are heavily going to hammer down on to win their matchup today, and then our upset, a huge favorite for one team, but we're going to go the other way and pick the other side to get the upset. Our upsets have been shaky. Our locks have been very well. 3-1 on our locks so far this season. The only one we missed was the Chargers against the Cowboys a couple weeks back. Still upset about that one. Chargers at home. I really thought it was a hammer down lock in that game. But I'm really excited about the two picks I have today. Really confident in my lock as always. The upset, I'm expecting a huge upset. For what I have written down here and that I'm going to talk about. Let's start with our lock, though. And let's go to this Florida matchup. Go to the Florida matchup here and give me Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers over the Miami Dolphins. Doom. Lock it in for my lock of the week. A home game for the healthier Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dean will play. Jason Pierre-Paul, I believe, is back as well for that defense. The offense. Do we say an angry Tom Brady? I mean, they won the game last week. He won his return. He got the all-time passing record. Is it an angry Tom Brady? But still a early window Tom Brady at home against a terrible, weak opponent, especially defensively from what we've seen from Miami. This defense is giving up 27.3 points per game. Easily expect Tampa Bay to hit over that 30 mark in this matchup. Miami has not looked good all year. Jacoby Brissett's not doing it offensively. The defense with Brian Flores running that side of the ball hasn't been doing it either all year. I expect this game to be a blowout. for Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers. A little bit of play there with Tom Brady. But still, lock this game in. Doom. Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Miami Dolphins. Now let's get to the the upset of the week. A little bit of a spoiler there, but raise the alarms. Woo! This is our upset of the week. San Francisco 49ers over the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals in this game are sitting right now at 5-point favorites at home. NFC West games are always a bloodbath, always a blood show, a shot for shot, and never what you expect. NFC West games. Think back to this game we just saw on Thursday, Rams-Seahawks. Who would have expected the Seahawks to hang into that game all the way down the stretch, especially after Russell Wilson left the game and Geno Smith came in off the bench. Shout out to Geno Smith. He will be the starter going forward. Russell Wilson out for the next 4 to 8 weeks, having surgery on that finger he broke in that game. But still, NFC West games are always never what you expect. And in this game, undefeated 4-0 Arizona Cardinals against San Francisco 49ers, always injured, coming in, still injured, into Arizona, but Trey Lance is starting. I'm expecting big things from the number 3 overall pick in Trey Lance. San Francisco has won 3 of their last 4 matchups against the Arizona Cardinals, and it's bold. But I like the 49ers to come up top in this game. I like Trey Lance. We haven't seen full force Trey Lance yet. We have not seen the full potential, the full offensive arsenal of Kyle Shanahan running an offense with Trey Lance at quarterback. I'm excited to see what he dials up today. I'm excited to see, the runs, the more QB draws, the QB powers, the QB runs, and then also throwing in the deep shots. Let Trey Lance use his abilities in this game. Let him run the ball. Let him throw it deep to Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. No George Kittle. He's going to have to hit these wide receivers a lot in deep downfield in this game. Cardinals are a tough defense to go against in your first career start, but I'm expecting big things today from Trey Lance, and I'm heavily favoring this upset happening. 5-point favorite for the Cardinals at home, but I like the Niners. Give me the Niners in an upset over the Arizona Cardinals. So we're locking in Tampa Bay over Miami, and we're calling the upset for Niners over Cards in this game. Let's take a quick trip over the pond before we get out of here. Get a quick little update of what's happening in this Jets and Falcons game. End of the third quarter right now, going into the fourth. Get our fours up for the fourth quarter. Falcons still sitting at 20 points. Have not scored in the third quarter, but the Jets put up 6 points in the third. Looks to be a touchdown for Ty Johnson. Looks like they missed the extra point in that one. Sitting at 9 points. Yes, Matt Amendola has one field goal early on, but missed his extra point with Ty Johnson's touchdown run. So Jets still currently down in this game in London that's currently going on, entering into the fourth quarter. Falcons up 20-9 in this one. That touchdown by Ty Johnson was a 1-yard rush. Matt Amendola's extra point was no good. Hit the left upright, didn't get in. The Jets capped off a 7-play, 29-yard drive. So, woof by the New York Jets. But capped it in, got in the end zone for the touchdown in that one. Working their way back, trying to at least, against the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan in this game right now sitting at 244 yards going into the fourth quarter. Kyle Pitts hasn't done anything yet. Still sitting at 6 receptions, 64 and a touchdown. He's hit his projection and got in the end zone for the first time this season. But still, Kyle Pitts, you'd like to see some more work out of him going into the fourth quarter. We'll see what Arthur Smith can dial up once we get out of here. But before we do, let's get another rundown here, winding down here at the end of the hour. Let's go back and get a step back and go back to what we are calling here on the show. Fantasy football starts and sits. Start Leonard Fournette and Damian Williams at running back. Fournette's going up against the Miami Dolphins. Damian Williams against the Las Vegas Raiders. Sit Cortland Sutton against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Devonta Smith against the Carolina Panthers. And finally, our lock and upset of the week, locking in Tampa Bay Buccaneers over Miami Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers as an upset in Trey Lance's debut against the Arizona Cardinals. That's all the time we have on the Slaw Sports Show. We pretty much got everything covered, so we're going to get out of here early today and get things rolling. Go get some food and get ready and sit down and get your lineup set for the 1 o'clock games before they kick off. So thank you for tuning in. Those of you listening on WSOE 89.3, thank you for driving, listening to the radio, however you checked out the Slaw Sports Show today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you again for those tuning in on YouTube, YouTube Live at the Slaw Sports Show. Thanks for joining as well and stopping by today and this morning. Tomorrow, we have Overreaction Monday on the podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get a podcast at the Slaw Sports Show. We do Overreaction Mondays every single Monday, overreacting to the things we saw on Monday and previewing the Monday Night Football game. That's why we didn't get to it on today's show. We will get to it on tomorrow's episode on the podcast for Overreaction Monday. Hope you guys check it out. Check out some of our other shows as well. But for now, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining, and until next time.